If you want to go to Disneyland and you say to yourself, all the lights have to be green before I'll even get in the car, you're never going to get in the car, right? So just trust me when I tell you, when that opportunity comes, for any of us, the circumstances will never be perfect.
Welcome to Trial to Triumph, hosted by Caleb Johnson, the show about leaning into life's constant testing on your way to realizing your biggest blessings.
How's it going, everyone? This is Caleb Johnson, host of From Trial to Triumph. Today, I am very, very excited for our guest today, Rob Rowsell. He has had a very interesting past, and we'll get into that. I'm really excited to hear his story. And now he has acquired hundreds of millions of dollars in real estate. So, Rob, welcome to the show.
Hey, Caleb. Thanks for having me, man. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. So, Rob, can you give our listeners just a quick backstory about just your background and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. So we're going to run through it really in fast forward mode. But, when I was growing up as a kid, I didn't have a whole lot of supervision. My mom was a single parent. I didn't know it at the time. I know now she was a functioning alcoholic. But she was doing a really good job. That being said, that I didn't see that. She was doing a really good job of providing for my sister and I as a single parent, but that required, as many of us know, that required a lot of hours away from the home, which leaves your kids less supervised than maybe what we would call ideal in our world, right? So because of that lack of supervision, had a lot of freedom, hung around with the wrong people, started smoking a little weed at 11 years old, 12 years old, drinking Boone's Farm apple wine down on the railroad tracks on Friday and Saturday nights, and that led over a long period of time to bigger drugs. I consider weed and alcohol a gateway drug when you're 11, 12 years old, at least in my experience and everybody I've ever seen. But ended up fast forward to the age of 33 years old. I am homeless. I am unemployable. A lot of my teeth missing in my face. I am, within inches of going to prison for a long period of time. I'm within inches of death. I'm depressed. I'm despondent in every way, shape, and form. Thank goodness my wife did not give up on me. I'm sitting in my probation officer's office for my intake appointment for the second probation officer. I had one for domestic violence and one for driving under the influence of crystal meth. And I'm sitting there with this intake application that's an inch thick that wants to know my work history, my drug history, my domestic violence history, and all those things. And I'm thinking, as I got tears streaming down my face, Caleb, I'm thinking, am I going to lie like I've always done, or am I going to get naked on this application and actually ask in a spirit of humility for some help that could change the direction of my life? And as I sat there with tears on my face, thinking of the turmoil I had put my wife through, who's never done drugs but lived on the streets homeless with me, my parents, and my wife's parents, and not only my wife's parents were telling my wife to run like hell, it was my own parents telling my wife to run like hell. Thank goodness she didn't listen. But my kids, who I hadn't seen in months and months, my ex-wife, who thank God left me, she had to. The guy that she was married to, she had to be left. While I'm sitting there contemplating all that, I says to myself, I am done. I'm done living below what I know God has in store for me. I'm done treating the people in my life like that by my actions. I'm done with the frequent interaction with the police because of my petty theft and fraudulent schemes. I'm done. So I decided to get naked on that application, right down to the fact that there was still a warm crack pipe in my pocket, knowing that this new probation officer of mine could set aside the probation and have me do the 2 years in prison. And she came in, after review, took the packet, went back to her office, came back in after reviewing it, and she said very sarcastically, "Come on in my office." She said to me, "I guess we don't need to run a drug test now, do we?" Right? And we both, well, not both. She laughed. I didn't laugh. I was scared to death, wondering if the trap door was going to come out from underneath me and have a chute right to a police car. But that didn't happen. She said, "Look, You look like Skeletor. You look like Walking Death. You're done. Look, if you're not serious, tell me, because I don't have time to waste. Let's just set aside the probation and have you do the prison time, right? And she says, but if you are serious, I'm going to help you change your life. Okay. So that's what happened. We set out a plan that day for the remainder and the trajectory of my life as it is today, right there in that probation office. And by the way, that's also the name of chapter 1. You got to be done, because until you're done, nobody's going to help you. And it's one of the first questions that I ask anybody that comes to me for sponsorship in the 12-step program world that I live in. They say, will you sponsor me? And my first question is, are you done?
And I'm just curious, what do most of the people say when you ask them that?
Well, they always say yes, but their
Oh,
actions
they always
reveal
do.
the truth come later. And some of that is 60% of the time it is the truth, and 40% of the time they still want to write their book some more. And but we
Okay.
sit on the sidelines
Wow.
patiently, and we allow them to continue to write their story. And when they realize that it didn't get any better out there and they really are done, I'm there for them. I'm ready for them.
Okay. Okay. I want to. You mentioned your book and the first chapter being called "I'm Done," and what? Because I've had that moment too, not to that extent where I haven't been a drug addict, praise God, but I've been depressed and just not happy with life. And when I made that mind shift too, I that had to happen, right? Where you say, I'm done. God, what do you want? What do you want to do with me? I'm done. What what does that? What do you think that does in people, and how necessary is that for people that want to change?
It's absolutely necessary. And here's why. Because the pain to remain the same has got to be greater than the pain to change. Until the pain to remain the same is not greater than the pain to change, we're not going to change. We're going to sit, we're going to be comfortable, we're going to be complacent. And it isn't just with drugs and alcohol. Look, I've been many times with my health, gotten complacent and put, when I got sober and realized I quit cigarettes 2 years into sobriety. I had smoked for 20 years. I'm happy to say since 2002, I have not picked up a drink or a drug, because I went through those same 8 building blocks that are chapters in my book. And I said, I am done. And chapter 2 is you got to get uncomfortable and take action, which is also what I did. What I realized, and I'll go through this part of the story as well briefly. What I realized and didn't realize until I realized it was I had switched addictions, Caleb. I went from drugs and alcohol to food and cigarettes. So for the first 2 years of sobriety, I was I was up to 4 packs of cigarettes per day, lighting one off the other. I needed to gain 30 pounds because, like my probation officer so lovingly pointed out, I look like Skeletor, right? So I needed to gain 30 pounds. I gained 100 pounds. Okay, so I was 70 pounds overweight, most of that in my belly. I looked like an 8-month pregnant skinny lady walking around like a snake that swallowed a mouse. And I needed to lose the weight. And you know what? I said to myself, I am done. Chapter 2, you got to get uncomfortable and take action. For me, everybody's story is going to be different. My story was with Jenny Craig. I went down to Jenny Craig. I lost the 70 pounds in 6 months. I went cold turkey on the cigarettes. And I went through the same 8 building blocks that the 8 chapters of my book point out. And I changed my life once again. But it's not to say that since 2002, when I lost the weight, that's been 21 years now, right? That I haven't gained back 15 pounds, 20 pounds, 10 pounds, 8 pounds, and had to say to myself once again, I am done, right? I am done, because the book isn't for, although most people would look at the cover, see me holding a photo of me of myself with in a mug shot from back in the day, and say, well, that's a rags to riches story, right? Because the full title of the book is How I Went from Homeless to Extraordinary Success and Happiness in a Short Period of Time, as a subtitle to the book. So people think it's a rags to riches story, or maybe I need to be a drug addict to read it. It's really not. It's really the principles of success that will take anybody out of a life of complacency, whatever that looks like. Because at the end of the day, you and I both run into a lot of people that are living well below what I know the Lord has in store for them, because he has gifted them with talents and traits that I don't have, that they're just got parked on the side while they do their 9 to 5, 40 hours a week, play with the kids on weekend, hang around with friends, have a beer, hanging around the barbecue, when they're so capable of so much more, and the Lord has so much more planned for them. So the book is really to get people out of that life of complacency.
Okay. Okay. And so step one is I'm done. So once people make that mindset shift, what do you recommend, and what do you think comes next?
Well, step two is that book chapter number 2 is you've got to get uncomfortable and take action. So that means that, because, and I'd say it just like this in my book, the world and the people around you, they don't care. Talk is cheap, right? At the end of the day, I am done is just talk, right? People have heard it from you and hundreds of thousands of others that have done absolutely nothing, because, quite frankly, and I love the way that Zig Ziglar puts it, is character is following through with the decision long after the feeling that encouraged the decision is gone, right? Because that's, saying I am done is in a fit of frustration, but then actually understanding, back to what I mentioned earlier, the pain to remain the same is less than the pain to make some changes and take some action. In this case, stacked actions, and that chapter number 2, you've got to ride the wave of momentum. In other words, if I go to the gym and I do curls once a week, once a month, we all know what type of results I'm going to get. If I follow a good eating plan 2 days out of the week and eat whatever I want, whenever I want, the other 5 days, how's that? How's that going to look on the waistline? It's not going to change a darn thing. It's the momentum of those stacked actions over and over and over again is what's going to make absolute change in our lives.
That's good. That's good. What? So in 2002, is that when you said you were first done?
No, when I was first done was sitting in the probation officer's office in 1999. So it was a couple of years at the very end of 99, call it 2000. It was November 22nd, 1999 is my birthday. It's more important than my belly button birthday because that's my sobriety birthday. So,
Praise God.
Praise God, 23 years ago, coming up on 24.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
yeah. So, but I've said I am done many times. I've said I am done with employees that were pushing my buttons and running my store and ruining my culture. That, I was complacent. I allowed their performance, meaning what they could accomplish within my business, to quash the fact that there was negative over here, and numerous conversations about the negative were not addressed. And I finally had to say, I am done. And regardless of what their performance level was, I had to replace them. So you can use the 8 building blocks for success on anything, whether it's I am done with this relationship, whatever that relationship is. I just use an extreme example of an employee relationship. That can be any relation. I am done with this, with being treated like this by certain individuals. I am done with my own behavior as far as me allowing these things in my life to transpire. I am done, and then taking action and then riding the wave of momentum on stacked actions really pertains to, hey, I am done with a lukewarm relationship with Jesus Christ, right? I'm done with that. So what does that look like? Well, action. Okay, I'm going to read the word. I'm going to start with 5 minutes and set a goal for 30 minutes eventually over the next 30 days. I'm going to be in prayer on a regular basis, which is nothing more than conversations with the Lord. I'm going to get around other Christians, whether it's through reading Christian authored books, being on Christian podcasts, being at church on a regular basis, and not just an attender, although that's okay in the beginning, but a member, somebody that contributes to the success of that place of worship's actions in the community. That's very important, because you can be an attender, and then, oh my goodness, I might even end up being a tither that puts my money where my mouth is and really believes in what that place of worship is doing with my pocketbook.
And Let's talk a little bit about that journey, because at what point did you become a Christian?
It's funny you ask that, because most people would think, based upon my story, that I had become a Christian and a strike of lightning came down and all this change happened in my world on November 22nd, 1999. But it didn't happen that way for me. Praise God for the people that it did happen for. I was 2 years clean and sober, laying on the couch on Saturdays when I was off of work and Sundays when I was off of work, smoking that 4 packs of cigarettes a day, borderline depression, 70 pounds overweight. And I realized that even with recovery, even though in the eyes of the world, I was making 6 figures in the automotive space that I was a part of, I was no longer a drug addict, I was contributing to my family, but I had a void in my life that only the Lord could have filled. Now, I didn't know that. And if you said that to me, hey, Rob, it looks to me like you've got a hole in your life that only the Lord could fill, I would have said you've lost your mind, right? So I totally get it that as I say that, some of your listeners may go, what is he talking about? It's okay. Don't give up yet, right? But that's kind of, so I wandered in. One day I woke up, and that day happened to be Easter Sunday, So I was one of those Christians that showed up on the 2 holidays, right? Easter and Christmas up to that point. And Easter was the day. And I woke up when I was in the shower, I knew that I was going to rededicate my life to the Lord at that church service that I was going to, even before I walked into the doors of that church, because I knew that I had the realization that I had that void to be filled, and only the Holy Spirit, or for us that are Christians, the Jesus Christ was going to fill that hole.
Wow. Okay.
And so to answer your question, 2002.
2002. Okay. And so from 1999 to 2002, you're making 6 figures in the automotive industry. How did that come about?
I stumbled into, great question. So, and the story goes like this, I still had a bunch of chiclets missing out of my face, meaning when I smiled, it wasn't the prettiest thing in the world, right? So, and I'm the guy in the automotive space, I'm the guy that says, hey, Caleb, looks like the coolant leak on your car is the water pump, and you need a water pump, coolant. We should probably do a thermostat in the labor, and here's the total amount. Can I get your approval to do it? Well, those guys need to earn trust with their clients and look good for that role. So I didn't think I looked good enough to do that just yet. So I went to work a day. I was in a spirit of humility, not proud at all. I knew at work a day I could get paid at the end of the day if I checked enough boxes on the application, that I wouldn't just end up digging ditches for $5.50 an hour, because that's what minimum wage was back then in '99. But backing up a few years, when I was on a little bit of a clean run, when I was still running and gunning and using, I would go to work a day and I would fill out the application with a little bit less truth than there was, meaning I would check a bunch of boxes for things that I didn't really know how to do. So I didn't end up on the bus of ditch diggers for $5.50 an hour, and I would end up at a job for $15-20 an hour, but I wouldn't last very long, because it wouldn't take them long to figure out I didn't know anything about what I said I did know how to do. So when I was in rehab, they taught me rigorous honesty. If you're not honest, then you're really just building up these things inside of you that will have you use drugs again. So when I went to work a day, I filled out the application with complete honesty, even the part that I'm an automotive guy. Now, how many people, I'm going to answer this question for you, so you don't have to worry about answering it, but how many people go to work a day looking for a service advisor? The answer is nobody. Nobody goes to work a day looking for a service advisor. But I filled out the application honestly, and I slid it across the desk. And I did check off a couple of boxes of things I really knew how to do, like electrical and plumbing. And the nice lady, when it was my turn, called me up to the counter and she said, look, I've got an electrical job. It pays $11 an hour, probably last a week. It lasted 3 weeks. And then when she looked to the left, and this is the Lord, totally the Lord working on my behalf, because I was honest on that application, Caleb. I looked to the left, I looked to the right, and she did, and she slid a card across the counter, and she said, I'm not supposed to do this, but my husband owns an auto repair shop and he needs a service advisor. You need to call him. And I called him. And I worked for him for the next 5 years. And by his example, Caleb, he taught me how to run an honest and ethical auto repair shop. I was the best employee he ever had or ever has had since then. And that's the last W-2 job I've ever had in my life.
Oh, that story gives me chill bumps. That's awesome. That's so cool. Wow. Okay. So you've been in the automotive industry, and then it sounds like, and real quick, Workaday, is that, what is that?
Labor force. They have them in every city or state when people aren't really what's the word I'm looking for? Aren't really hireable. You know, the less desirables, if you will. You don't have to look good. You just show up there and you fill out an application, and it's a temp agency. It's a different name for most temp agencies are filling admin jobs or special skills. This is just Workaday. It's labor force temp agency.
Okay. And so it sounds like you worked your way up in the ranks at that automotive industry in that job, and that being your last W-2 job, how did you what did that shift look like? And so first let's start with, what did you do after the W-2 job?
It's a very, very exciting story. So when I had the W-2 job, over a period of that 5 years, my father saw the growth in me. And that's an amazing thing that I point out in my book. One of the chapters is called, You've Got to Prepare Now for What's Coming. So I was preparing myself. I was reading books by Zig Ziglar and listening to Jim Rohn and reading Joel Osteen. And I was and going to church and reading The Purpose Driven Life by Rick Warren. I was changing inside. Now, the one person that doesn't see the change as drastic as the world does is the person that's going through the change, right? Because the only one that doesn't know they're in the water is the fish itself, right? That's just kind of how it goes. But my father was seeing the change. And when I was coming out to California, a lot of people from Phoenix area, they'd escape to California during the summer for the heat. I would do the same. And my father would, over a period of time, began to build some trust and some respect for what I was doing as we talked about auto repair. And he told me of a friend in California that owned an auto repair shop that would always cry on his shoulder. I want to say that in a loving way, complain pretty bad about how his sons, he had 5 of them, and his exit strategy was for one of his sons to take over his auto repair shop. And one at a time, they had all tapped out and done different things. And the one guy that was left was a good auto repair guy, was not a good customer service guy. And I worked with him for a day. Definitely not a guy you wanted running the front counter. He was rough around the edges. Good guy, great heart, not a customer service guy. So I told my father, well, tell him that your son does this and that he's interested should he ever want to sell. Didn't think much of it, just kind of casual conversation. 3 years later, my father called me. I had just come back from California from visiting my dad for Thanksgiving. So it's around December the 1st. Think about these circumstances. And I'm at work. My father calls and says, I just talked to Sterling and he's ready. And I said, who's Sterling? Ready for what? He says, Sterling, the owner of that auto repair shop. He's ready to sell. And I froze in my tracks. I just 100% froze when he says, yeah. And I left out the best part. He wants to close the deal by the end of the year. We're talking 30 days away.
Wow. Okay.
I'm in a house with the prepayment penalty because by then I'm 5 years clean. And I 1 year into home ownership with a prepayment penalty of $12,000. So, and to me, that might as well have been $1 million back then. Okay. So there's no way I'm going to be able to pay off that prepayment and sell the house. It hadn't gained enough equity. I had just started a ministry bringing, alcohol and drug addicts to church. I had got a bus donated and I'd begun that ministry. I had a number of sponsees, 3 of them, that I had made a commitment. I was going to get them to 1 year sober. I hadn't accomplished that yet. So I had a lot of things going on. But, the funny thing is, if you want to go to Disneyland, and you say to yourself, all the lights have to be green before I'll even get in the car, you're never going to get in the car, right? So just trust me when I tell you, when that opportunity comes, for any of us, it's the circumstances will never be perfect, right? So I made a commitment to get on a plane, take a couple of days off, get on a plane, and go check out that auto repair shop and work alongside of the abrasive son that wasn't going to end up with it, that didn't like me because I might as well have been Satan because I was buying a shop out from underneath him. That's a whole different story.
Mm-hmm.
But the point to all that is the circumstances won't be right or perfect ever, right? You've just got to prepare yourself and get ready for the phone call to ring.
Wow. And that spoke to me because where I am in my business, I'm kind of working on a smaller property, and I'm not really pursuing any other properties aggressively. So, but that hit me just so hard because, like you said, you can't, if you want to go to Disneyland, you can't wait for every light to be green. And that hit me hard. So how can, let's say if someone else is listening to this and they are kind of in that spot where they might have something on their plate, but maybe they would just want all the lights to be green. What would you say to them?
I guess that's a great question. So continue to get the education necessary to increase your advantages. It's a key word that I use when I'm teaching people. If you can picture the word advantages with a capital A, I only invest in areas that I have advantages in, right? I have no advantages whatsoever, either knowledge-wise or control-wise, in the stock market would be an extreme example. So should the money that I park there, should I park any there? As 100% money I know I can lose, but I have no control over. So the key is okay, so you want to be a real estate investor. Continue to get the knowledge to where you can underwrite or understand how to value those opportunities very, very well. So when it does come, the lights are all green, so to speak, because you can, with like a pro, boom through that underwriting. For me, it was auto repair shops. When I went to look at the books of that auto repair shop, because of, it's kind of like if and I'm gonna show my age here right now, Caleb. Forgive me, but the Karate Kid, did not know that he was learning the karate moves with wax on, wax off, and paint the fence, right? But when it came time to protect himself, and his sensei started throwing punches at him, he knew how to protect himself. I didn't know that auto repair shop owner that I was shadowing was teaching me by his example how to paint the fence. I didn't know that. In fact, quite frankly, I thought he was a bit of an a-hole some of those times that he was teaching me by example how to be the best business owner I could be until I became a business owner. It's amazing how much wisdom he got immediately. But my point there is when it came time to look at the books of that auto repair shop to evaluate take RO average and return on investment, I did it like a pro, with my eyes closed, and I realized what an opportunity it was.
Okay. And it also sounded like, so my dad has been the biggest, my first mentor in my life, I'd say. And it sounded like, especially once you started to make a shift in your life, that was the same case for you. And I'd like to hear just what that relationship did once that relationship with your dad was mended. What did that do for you spiritually, mentally, emotionally? Can you touch on that?
That's a great question. My father, I'll tell you, from one extreme to the other. When I went to visit my dad when we first got sober back in '99, we literally went there for Christmas for 1999. I was a month clean, 40 days clean. My father had a trailer outside in his yard, and that's where my wife and I had to stay. He did not trust me to stay in his spare bedroom of his house. Fast forward 5 years, my father loaned me $50,000 to open that first auto repair shop because that, and I haven't really gone into the details, and all the details of the purchase of all three of my no money down first auto repair shops are in the book. But the seller did seller financing, and he wanted 150 for the business, but he wanted 50 grand down, and he would float the other 100. And the 50 grand along, actually I say 50 grand, it was 50 grand for the business and another 10 grand. He loaned me about $60,000 to get the first auto repair shop up off the ground. So that was, getting to your question, that was an amazing thing to go from not being able to stay in his house to actually loaning us some of his retirement money in order to open and get that auto repair shop off the ground. Um, it was just an amazing boost of confidence. Number one, it was an I'm proud of you. That my dad's generation, I'm sorry to say, that hugs and I love you and I'm proud of you. That just doesn't happen from my dad's generation. He's not from that. I'm breaking that chain. My kids hear I love you and I'm proud of you just about, if not every time, just about every time we have any correspondence at all, of any kind. But my father, that's not where he wasn't taught that way. His dad didn't do it for him. So, but I think our, when my father passed away in 2013, I can honestly say that my father was proud of me and I was proud of him for the changes he had made in the last 5 years of his life.
Wow. And I'm a part of a men's group at church as well. And, there's a lot of guys there that I hear of people that the relationships, especially you see this more now, the relationships with their parents aren't what they should be, or the parents, the relationship with their children are strained and they haven't talked to their family members in like years. And it's just heartbreaking. And I think that's what you just said is such a great thing to really take heed of, because we don't know, we aren't promised tomorrow. So if you have an opportunity to build that or mend that relationship, and just take advantage of it, because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
I agree. And to mend broken fences takes a level of maturity that most people don't have, and it's very sad. And if I were truth be told, I'm sure my level of maturity could be increased in some areas when it comes to relationships as well. And life's not perfect; it's all about progress, not perfection. But the Holy Spirit from time to time will put somebody on my heart that I need to make an amends to, and I don't hesitate. I don't love that. In fact, if hate's a strong word that I try never to use, but I hate having to call somebody and say, "Hey, I feel like I've wronged you. Here's what I feel. How do I make this right to you?" Number one, usually the response is, a lot of times, number one, don't let it happen again, right? But number two, I don't even feel like you wronged me in that area. So sometimes we carry a heavier burden than necessary.
Absolutely. Rob, I feel like we only scratched the surface of what we could have really talked about. But before we close out, I want to go ahead and ask you 3 questions. One being, if you could recommend one book to our listeners besides your own, let's sneak that in there, because of course everyone's going to go look at your book after this. So one book besides your own, what would that be?
Well, I'm going to throw a couple at you. One is very important to my daily growth. I've been reading it every day for 21 years of being a Christian, and that's the Holy Bible, right? And I would encourage people to get a version that they're comfortable with. I happen to read in the NIV, New International Version. A lot of the younger folks read in the NLT, the New Living Translation. And get the YouVersion app on your phone, YOU version, and you can see what you're reading in any version before you go and buy one. But that's number one. Number two is The Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren. For mature Christians, lukewarm Christians, and non-Christians. That is a very, very good book that taught me the 5 purposes of being a Christian, or 5 Purposes of Being on This Earth, and it just flat out changed the trajectory of my life.
That's amazing. And how about, do you have a business book? I know the Bible does, I mean, you can replicate an amazing business if you look off the Bible, but do you have a business book that you would recommend as well?
There's been a lot of business books.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the one that's made the biggest impact on my financial future is a book by Tony Robbins, Money, Master the Game. And, Tony Robbins is a rah-rah guy, and everybody's got their favorite 5. And, Awaken the Giant Within is a great book, but Tony's never been one of my favorite 5. But so this book is not a rah-rah book. That book, Tony, over a period of time, was mentoring many, many very high net worth individuals. And my interpretation, anyways, is those high net worth individuals knew how to stack cash in their businesses, but didn't know how to invest it intelligently as well as they could have. And that's why he wrote that book. But it's from the layman, the W-2 employee, all the way up to the multimillionaire investor. And the tricks and traits that you'll learn throughout that book are just priceless.
Okay. I haven't read that, but I definitely need to.
One.
And if people want to learn more about you, where's the best place for them to do that at?
I have an online community of business owners and real estate investors. It's called the ATL, Addicted to Life, All in Community. It's based upon the 8 principles of my book. We talk about the Lord. I'm going to warn everybody. We talk about the Lord a lot. We talk about business. We talk about wealth. We talk about health. We talk about relationships, in-depth, outstanding, extraordinary relationship with our wives, our kids, our cousins, our uncles, our employees. That is, you can go to my website, Rob Rowsell. That's ROWSELL.com. And immediately there's a button you can click that says join the community, and it's going to show you some videos. As a member behind the paywall, we have a meeting once a month, and I do one-on-ones with people. But every meeting we've ever done is recorded for the last 2 years, so you can type in a search for wealth or health or real estate, multifamily, single family. I've done just about every category of real estate, and watch the previously recorded content on that subject.
Okay, great. And if you can give our listeners one takeaway from today, what would that be?
If I could give somebody one takeaway from today?
Yes.
Anybody is capable of accomplishing anything. Take the barriers of what you think you could accomplish, which is the only thing the only barrier you really have is what's between your ears, because it's all about what you think you can accomplish. Because if you could accomplish anything and knew you couldn't fail, we've all heard it, most of us have, what would you attempt? Okay? None of us can think that big. I totally get it. But whatever just came to mind, think bigger.
That's so good. Well, Rob, again, really appreciate your time, brother. Yeah, love just getting to know your story. And again, it feels like we scratched the surface on this, but just want to say thank you again for spending this time with us today.
My pleasure, man. We'll do another one. It'll be on chapter 2. No, just kidding.
Yeah, we'll have to. That's what I was thinking. Chapter 2, 3, shoot. Well, everyone, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate it, and catch you next time.
It's time to grab your victory. Find us on the web at redseacapitalgroup.com and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Red Sea Capital Group.